If anyone joins in late, feel free to pick up where we are. A recording of the presentation will also be sent afterwards, so you can watch that back. All right. So thank you all so much for joining me today for our exciting webinar on longevity. My name is Chanelle. I am one of the registered nutritionists here at VitaminLab. Today, we're going to go on a fascinating journey to discover how we can live longer and healthier lives. We're living in a time where science and technology are changing the way that we understand and approach aging. It's so important that we gather this knowledge to empower ourselves to make smart choices for our well-being. In this webinar, we'll explore topics like nutrition, lifestyle interventions, supplementation, and how they can all impact our lifespan. It's not just about physical health either. So we'll talk about the importance of mental and emotional well-being and how building meaningful connections with others can impact our lives. So there will be some time at the end, hopefully for some questions, but if anything comes up throughout the presentation, feel free to pop it in the question and answer box. I'll do my best to answer those as we go. If not, I will certainly send an email with responses at the end of the presentation. There's also an emoji button. So if you've learned something new or something's of interest to you, feel free to give me a thumbs up or a smiley face and let me know. Just as a reminder, all the statements made in today's presentation and the respective products are not intended to diagnose, treat, heal, or cure any disease or condition. Longevity is quite a complex topic. So in today's presentation, I've broken it down into 4 major points. So in the presentation, we're going to start by looking at major causes of death in the United States and which of these are preventable. Next, we're going to look at regions around the world where people are living the longest and with a very high quality of life. We'll learn what they're doing right and how the research and studies support these behaviors. Next, we'll go through some of the biological markers of aging. This is more so than just the gray hair and wrinkle part of aging. And then we'll look at how we'll learn how we can best slow or reduce these markers naturally through supplementation. So when we think about getting older or aging, we're often picturing all the things we won't be able to do anymore. The limitations we'll face, the care we'll need, the potential health issues we'll develop. You've probably all seen your own family members age, and that might seem like they're all there is to it. So if you look at this list here, I'm sure we all know someone, maybe even ourselves, who are suffering or who have suffered with one of these diseases. So this list here is the 10 most common causes of death in the United States. On here, we've got various types of cancers like prostate, lung, and colorectal cancer, diabetes, which includes both type 1 and type 2 diabetes, among a bunch of other ones. But what if I told you some of these are preventable? Some of the causes on this list are what's called lifestyle illnesses, meaning they're primarily linked with the day-to-day habits of an individual. I'm going to pop a question up here. Just want everyone to take a guess on how many of these are lifestyle illnesses. So I'll pop this up. I'll give everyone a moment to answer. I think you should be able to exit the box or drag it to the side of the screen so you can review the whole list before you answer as well. All right, we've got lots of guesses, some for 3, 5, and all of them. Well, not quite all of them, but you're right. Half of the top causes of death in the United States are lifestyle diseases. So we can actually do something to intervene. So obesity is also noted here. It's not necessarily a leading cause of death, but it can certainly increase the risk of developing other chronic diseases like heart disease, certain cancers, and therefore another preventable leading contributor to death. So there are, of course, genetics that play into all of these diseases, but the rates are actually quite low. In cancer, for instance, the rate of cases linked to genetics are less than 5%. So aging doesn't necessarily mean having to stock up on prescription medications or constantly needing a rest, There are ways that we can hack our bodies through sport, healthy eating, supplements, and mindfulness to make aging a more graceful and exciting journey. So before we get into all of the studies and recommendations, let's talk about health span. So there are many definitions out there, but one that most people can agree on is that it's the period of life spent in good health, free from chronic disease and the disability of aging. The goal, as I'm sure many of you have, is to extend our health span. So in the US, the average lifespan is 77 years old. This is almost 10 years more than the lifespan in 1960. So though people are continuing to live longer, living longer isn't always better. If we're just increasing our lifespan, we're just increasing the number of years we're alive, but not necessarily the number of years we're staying healthy. With medical interventions, people are able to live longer with disease and illness. But how can we reduce the likelihood of getting these diseases in the first place? So there are regions around the world where people are living both the longest and with a high quality of life. So these regions also have some of the lowest prevalence of chronic disease around the world. And these are called the blue zones. So these are 5 regions around the world with the highest concentration of centenarians. These are people who live to be over 100 years old. So not only are they living to be over 100, but they're also living a healthy and good quality life. In 2021, the United Nations recorded over 570,000 centenarians around the world. That's almost 4 times the amount that was recorded in the year 2000. So just across the globe, people are living longer. So these 5 blue zones are the group of Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, California, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, Sardinia, Italy, Ikara in Greece, and Okinawa in Japan. So though these regions are scattered all over the world, inhabitants of these regions share many commonalities in their day-to-day living. There's also a great documentary on Netflix called Down to Earth with Zac Efron. I believe 1 or maybe a few episodes talk about the blue zone, so it's quite interesting to watch. So one thing that these individuals really focus on is their diet. So their diets focus heavily on healthy fats with an ideal ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s. So ideally, we want this number to be as low as possible, like a 2-to-1 ratio, even a 1-to-1 ratio. And right now in the United States, on average, it's about 15-to-1. So omega-6 is what's found in many animal foods, corn, sunflower oils, and processed foods. Whereas omega-3, more so our healthy fats, are found in things like nuts and seeds, fatty fish, olive oils, and avocados. So individuals in the blue zones are also focusing on eating less meat, more plant-based proteins that focus heavily on fiber, more in-season fruits and vegetables with a concentrated nutrients and antioxidants, and then of course those fatty fish like sardines and salmon. So the group of Seventh-day Adventists is the exception. They are primarily vegetarian, but they focus heavily on getting a high intake of omega-3s from their plant sources, so like those avocados, nuts, and seeds. In a few of the regions, red wine, is consumed quite regularly. And in a few slides, I'll go over what the benefits of that are. So another thing that's really important in these regions is regular movement. So this is a really big component of a healthy lifestyle. So movement for them doesn't always necessarily mean lifting weights or going to the gym, but it's rather incorporating more purposeful daily movement. So many inhabitants of these regions are farmers, or they don't rely on a vehicle to get to work. So the commute is often done on foot. There's a lot of manual labor involved in their day-to-day. Walking is also just a huge part of their culture and socialization. In Italy, there's a tradition called passeggiata, where one strolls through the city streets or along the promenade after dinner, walking and socializing with friends. So walking after a meal can help reduce our blood sugar levels, which lower inflammation, our risk of heart disease, diabetes, and blood pressure. So it's a really great habit to adopt. So maybe instead of meeting a friend for dinner and drinks, we can meet them for a walk instead. So it's not just walking that the individuals do, but other activities like squatting while attending to a garden or dancing. These are all really common movements as well. So how does the research support this behavior? So we know that aging results in chronic low-grade inflammation, and a great way to reduce inflammation is through exercise. So studies have demonstrated that regularly performed cardiovascular exercise may reduce the markers of systemic inflammation, like our CRP levels, ESR, and ferritin. Of course, high intensity and strenuous activity can actually swing us in the other direction and increase the markers of inflammation. Activities would be like extreme bodybuilding or extreme endurance running. And these can increase inflammation, but this varies person to person. So it's always best to consult with your doctor or trainer to best determine where your sweet spot is. And it's not just inflammation in our cardiovascular health that can really benefit from exercise either. So studies on the effectiveness of physical activity on bone density in those with osteoporosis determine that weight-bearing aerobic exercise has an impact on improving bone density. So it's not true just for patients with osteoporosis, but also in postmenopausal women. Bone loss is a major risk factor when it comes to bone fractures, which of course we know is quite common in the elderly. Movement snacks are also just a great way to incorporate more movement in your day-to-day. This list is actually taken from the Blue Zones. So just a few examples there, doing some lunges, taking the stairs, even parking your car at the far end of the parking lot before going into the office or the store. All of these activities do add up over time. Another thing that these individuals really focus on is sleep. So individuals don't necessarily wake and work and sleep at certain hours, but they're listening to their bodies. Not all of us here have that luxury, and we know that there's a number of reasons why sleep can be affected. High cortisol levels due to a high stress environment, hormonal changes, even having kids at home that wake you up in the middle of the night. But focusing on improving sleep is really, really beneficial for overall health. So a meta-analysis looked at over 3 million participants. They found that both long and short sleep was associated with an increased risk of mortality and cardiovascular disease. So based on these large studies and also the guidelines from the Sleep Foundation, a healthy duration of sleep would be between 7 and 9 hours of restful sleep each night. So it's something we really, really want to focus on, is prioritizing our sleep. And then finally, a healthy social network. So we've all heard monkey see, monkey do. The environment that you surround yourself with does really impact your lifestyle choices. If you have friends who smoke, you may be more likely to smoke due to the social acceptance around the behavior. But the opposite is also true. So if you're hanging out with people who are exercising or eating well, you may too adopt those habits. So this could be why centenarians are so densely populated in these regions. If one person or a few people are adopting certain behaviors, others are likely to mimic that. Even today, you're all part of a healthy social network by engaging in a health discussion and learning about longevity. So just to support this, a 2015 meta-analysis looked at several longitudinal samples of the US population. So they looked at social support with measurable biomarkers of physical health. So these are things that we can measure, like our C-reactive protein, blood pressure, waist circumference, BMI, and then across all different stages of life. So what they found is that a higher degree of social integration was associated with a lower risk of physiological dysregulation. So this means that the more social you are, the less risk you have in developing high blood pressure or high levels of inflammation. Another study found that social isolation was shown to increase the risks of morbidity and mortality the same way that other factors like high blood pressure, smoking, and obesity do. So you can really, really see the benefits of social interaction. So a few of the markers of aging. So an individual's progression of aging can be understood by their phenotype. So this is a combination of their genotype or their genetic makeup and external factors like diet, lifestyle, and environment. So a number of processes and pathologies have that contribute to biological aging have been identified. And a couple that we're going to focus on is cellular damage, inflammation, and atherosclerosis. So cellular damage results from oxidative stress. So this occurs when there are insufficient antioxidants available to counteract the harmful effects of the reactive oxygen species. So oxidative stress can play a role in a ton of the chronic diseases we talked about at the beginning of the presentation, like diabetes, cancers, Alzheimer's, and cardiovascular disease. Inflammation can occur or result from a number of different things like chronic disease or illness that are present in the body, an inflammatory diet that's high in sugars and alcohol, allergies, or even irregular sleep patterns. And then atherosclerosis is the thickening or hardening of the arteries that's caused by a buildup of plaque in the inner lining of the artery. So risk factors for this include high cholesterol, high triglycerides, a diet that's high in saturated fats, smoking, obesity. So there's a ton of different lifestyle changes that we can make to influence this. So targeting these biological processes may prevent disease and promote healthy aging and longevity. Standard healthcare often reacts to illness, but when we're looking at longevity, we want to take a more proactive approach, and we can do this through supplementation. So we'll go over the list of a few supplements here to better support us. Again, I will send a copy of the presentation as well as a PDF handout with all of the information and doses, so don't feel like you need to take notes through this part. So the first ingredient we really want to talk about is coenzyme Q10 or CoQ10. So this is an antioxidant and anti-inflammatory offering numerous health benefits. While our bodies do naturally produce CoQ10, our levels drop by half as we get older, and this can be due to age-related oxidative stress and also with the use of statin medication. So by supplementing with CoQ10, it's possible to combat oxidative stress, to enhance our cardiovascular well-being, promote better blood sugar regulation, and even reduce our A1C levels. So a couple studies here to support its benefits. A study on long-term effects of CoQ10 at a dose of 200 milligrams daily revealed a significant reduction in cardiovascular mortality rates. This was compared to those taking a placebo. There was another study that looked at the use of CoQ10 at a 300 milligram daily dose for 2 years, and these individuals had chronic heart failure. So daily supplementation demonstrated an improvement in symptoms and a reduction in major cardiovascular events. So some very promising research on CoQ10. So resveratrol. So this is a polyphenol that's found in grape skins, red wine, and berries, nuts, well, peanuts. And this goes back to those blue zones when I was talking about some of the regions do drink 1 to 2 glasses of wine. And they do this for its antioxidant properties. The supplement resveratrol is the extracted benefits of the polyphenol in a supplement form. It acts as an antioxidant, reducing cellular damage and oxidative stress by helping to neutralize harmful free radicals in the body. So free radicals are unstable molecules that can cause stress and damage to the cells. This leads to accelerated aging. So by reducing oxidative stress, resveratrol can help slow down this aging process. It's also been shown to activate certain proteins that are called sirtuins. These are involved in the cellular processes related to aging. So really great antioxidant properties. So a couple studies here. Researchers at Tufts University in Boston found that resveratrol can help reduce the formation of plaques in Alzheimer-afflicted neural cells. Even in postmenopausal women, a daily dose of 150 milligrams a day can enhance cognitive and cerebrovascular function. So some really great benefits here in terms of reducing atherosclerosis and that oxidative stress. Another nutrient taken from the blue zones is, of course, omega-3. So this nutrient's really highly consumed in the Mediterranean diet in form of anchovies, sardines, olive oil, and those nuts and seeds. So omega-3s can help reduce the inflammation, which we know is a biomarker of aging, and can lead to many of those lifestyle illnesses that we talked about. So the EPA and DHA components have been studied particularly for their benefits on cardiovascular function. So this can help reduce triglyceride levels, lower blood pressure, improve overall blood vessel function, which of course can help reduce the risk of stroke and other major cardiovascular events. So a lot of what you see on the market when it comes to omega-3 is in the form of fish oil. But at VitaminLab, we do carry a vegan omega-3 in the form of algae. So this is really great for those of you avoiding or maybe allergic to seafood. Again, our goal for omega-3 and omega-6 is like a close to 1-to-1 ratio as possible. So your dose will really depend on maybe what your current diet looks like or areas that need support. So next we have NMN. So this one stands for nicotinamide mononucleotide. So this is a precursor to NAD, which is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Long words, we'll stick with the acronyms. So this is a coenzyme that is found in every cell in the body, and it's extremely important for many of the metabolic processes like energy and mitochondrial health. So across all kingdom of life, an increase in intracellular levels of NAD trigger shifts that enhance survival. So these include energy production and an increase in cellular repair. So we do produce this naturally, but as we age, our levels naturally drop almost by half in middle age. So by supplementing with NMN, we can increase our intracellular levels of NAD, which offer a variety of different benefits. Things like reducing inflammation, enhancing insulin secretion and action, and then improving neural function in the brain. So there's another precursor to NAD called NR, or nicotinamide ribosome. So of the three, NR, NAD, and then NMN, NMN is the most easily absorbed and bioavailable form for the body to absorb. So you can opt to supplement with just NMN or perhaps both precursors, NMN and NR, just in the off chance that certain cells prefer one over the other. So when looking at a dose for NMN, you do want to consider body weight when figuring out what dose is right for you and where within that range you should fall. And then we've got our vitamin D. So vitamin D always has so many great benefits. In the US alone, 42% of adults are deficient in vitamin D. So even if you're living in sunny California, your levels may still be low. So aging reduces the levels of vitamin D production in the skin, resulting in a 50% decrease of synthesized vitamin D from the UV rays. So vitamin D is really important in helping our body absorb calcium, which of course is important for maintaining bone structure and reducing the risk of fractures. A lot of research suggests that vitamin D can play a role in reducing the risk of certain cancers and helping in those with arthritis and autoimmune disease. Again, for vitamin D, doses can range quite significantly. It's quite important to get your baseline levels tested to see how much you need to supplement with. On average, a dose of about 2,000 international units is pretty standard for most people, but it's always best to consult with your doctor for this one. And then finally, we have our curcumin. So curcumin is the active compound that's found in our lovely yellow spice turmeric. It has a ton of different benefits, especially around aging. So turmeric or curcumin has some great anti-inflammatory properties. So cells that have aged in the body and stopped multiplying, but they've not yet died off, are called senescent cells. So these senescent cells induce pro-inflammatory markers, and curcumin, due to its anti-inflammatory properties, is able to counteract these effects. Curcumin may also play a role in helping to maintain telomere length, which is another sign of aging. So a telomere is a cap at the end of a chromosome, and it protects the end of the chromosome from becoming frayed or unnecessary recombination or repair. So each time that a cell divides, a part of the telemetric DNA is lost and telomeres become slightly shorter. Eventually, they become so short that the cells can no longer divide successfully and they undergo senescence or they die off. So telomere length can serve as a biological clock to determine the lifespan of the cell or the organism. So curcumin has been shown in numerous studies to help maintain the telomere length by activating an enzyme called telomerase, which helps keep these cells alive by adding DNA onto the telomeres. So some really, really great properties for curcumin. The only drawback would be that it's very low bioavailability. So only a small percent of what's consumed is actually being absorbed by the body. Now, one way to greatly increase this is to supplement with purpurine or black pepper extract. So just a small dose between maybe 1 and 5 milligrams can increase the absorption rate of curcumin by up to 2,000%. So this should always really be added into your supplement if you're using curcumin. Even in cooking, the benefits are there as well to add black pepper with it in when you're spicing your food with turmeric. All right, so there is our list of our 6 supplements that we went over, some doses as well. Again, I will send a whole list of this. Longevity, such a wide topic. The research around this is growing so rapidly. And today we covered just a brief overview on what some of the markers of aging are and the ways that we can support this naturally through our diet, exercise, and supplement interventions. As always, I always love to know what supplement you found the most interesting or you feel you learned the most about. I will pop up a little question here and give you all a minute to answer that. Lots of interest in CoQ10. It's also one of my favorites. I really love that. So after today's presentation, I will redirect everyone to our nutritionist booking page. You're welcome to book a complimentary consult with either myself or my colleague Talia, who's also a registered nutritionist. We're happy to talk to you about any of these ingredients that we spoke about today, about adding them into your formula, just some other benefits of regular supplementation or just learning a little bit more about your own formula. And then I'll just pop up one other question. Hopefully you found today's presentation beneficial and you feel like you've learned something. And if we have any questions, I do believe we have maybe 2 minutes or so, and I can answer. If not, and you want to read through the presentation and maybe send us an email, you're welcome to do that as well. I know it's a lot of information, but I'm glad to hear that a lot of you found this really valuable today. All right, so if we don't have any questions right now, that's totally fine. Feel free to send us an email. Our contact information is there. And like I said, you will be redirected to our booking page after this presentation. So you're welcome to book a consult at any time. Thank you so much for your time today and have a great afternoon.